Well, there's a lot of great parenting stories in the Bible, and there's the great story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is 3 generations of men and raising their families and getting married, and great stories there. There's the story of Hannah and Samuel, where she gave her boy to the Lord because she wanted a child so badly, and she prayed and prayed and prayed. When she got a child, she let him be raised by the high priest and serve in the temple. There's the great story of the prodigal son that always gets my heart, especially if you've ever had a wayward child, and we're very fortunate. Faith and I have never had to deal with that. But there's a lot of families that have had to deal with that, and so that's one of the great Bible stories. But I thought that I would like to preach on the most famous mother, or the most famous parent in the whole Bible, which would be the mother of Jesus, the Virgin Mary. And so I'm going to use Mary as my model tonight to tell you how she parented Jesus in 3 different stages of his life. Now, it's interesting how the Bible works in gaps. You see Moses at 40, the next chapter he's 80. And so you have 40 years of Moses' life that you can read about in history, and we know what happened. He went to Ethiopia and became the general of King Nicanos's army and married an Ethiopian woman. So we can look in history and see what happened in those 40 lost years. Well, the same thing is with Jesus. You see Jesus at his birth, and the next time you just keep flipping the chapters, he's now 12 years old, and then you flip the chapter again, he's 30 years old. So we see Mary interacting with him at 3 distinct stages of his life. So in these 3 stages, first of all, we see the baby Jesus, and I think they've got something to show you there. We see the baby Jesus, and then we also see him up to about the age of 2. The Bible gives a notation that he was a child in the house when the Magi visited. So we see this window of Mary and Jesus from the ages of 0 and 2. And then the next time we see Jesus, he is at his bar mitzvah, or at least engaging in that season of his life. And we see him at the age of 12. Now, for us in the Western world, we just see him teaching the teachers. But for people in the Jewish world, they see him at a bar mitzvah, telling them what he's learned and what he knows, and reading from the scriptures. So we'll talk about that in a moment. And then you've just flipped the chapter again, and we've got all these lost years of Jesus, 18 years of his life, where the Bible records absolutely nothing about him. And then we see Jesus as a 30-year-old starting his ministry, and then we get 3 more years of his life to the age of 33 and a half years whenever he died and rose again and ascended into heaven. So in all of these counts, you see different stages of Mary's interacting with Jesus that I think gives us an incredible lesson on parenting. First of all, in these 3 areas, it tells us that you're going to go through 3 stages of parenting. And I'm going to teach you something about each of the stages. The first stage is, what does God expect from me as a parent with my baby and my infants? What should I be doing? What should I not be doing? The next one is when Jesus was 12, about to turn 13, so he's just starting into his 13th year. So now you have to ask yourself, how many of you know that parenting infants is a lot different from parenting teenagers? There's a big difference, and so we're going to talk about that. And then finally, Mary finds herself parenting an adult. He is 30 years of age, he started his ministry, and she's still his mother. So she has to know how to parent an adult. And there's people in this room in all of those phases of parenting, and there's some of you who have already come through all of those phases of parenting, and you ought to be teaching this lesson tonight because you already know the answers, all right? So let me just give you a very quick equation that will help you understand how to parent in these stages. So I'm going to divide these in 7 years. So the first 7 years, you should be playing with your children, okay? So play with them for the first 7 years. And play hard, people, play hard. Don't send them off to play. No, you play. You play with your children in the first 7 years of their life. Don't put them in yes, I know you've got to get things done and you need to let them go play by themselves, but you also need to interact with these great playmates. That's the thing I was not expecting whenever we had our first granddaughter, is that I had to learn how to play again. It had been so long, and next thing I know, man, I'm a whiz at Play-Doh and coloring books and all the things that I just kind of forgotten about, and shooting marbles and whatever, and now I can jump a rope, and even now I have to skip because I have all girls. And so if we go somewhere and we're going to get there fast, come on, Papa, let's skip. So believe it, I'm not going to demonstrate that for you tonight, but I promise you, I can skip, and also do flips on a diving board. I mean, they just make you do things that you didn't even think about doing because their whole world is play. So play with them for the first 7 years of their life. Teach them for the next 7 years of their life. From the time of 7 to the time of 14, especially, is a time that you're building a foundation in money, relationships, sex, God, parenting, not parenting, but adulthood, interacting in relationships. So almost every tool that they're going to use in their adult life, you're teaching them a part of that tool between the time of 7 and 14. That's the beginning of the training years. And then the next 7 years, advise them. So this is your 14-year-old to your 21-year-old. Why advise them? Because if your children do not know how to make decisions, they will always be codependent upon another adult. And you have to raise and release children. The worst thing you can do is not give your child choices. The worst thing you can do is not let them make their own decisions. If they're ever going to grow up, they have to feel confident in their decision making, so that age time from 14 to 21 is where they're making decisions and you are advising them. There is no option that you don't clean your room. It's just when. That's the decision. The decision is not yes or no. No, that's not an option. You live in this house, you do the work, right? We live in this house together. There's no free ride in life. If you're still making your child's bed after that, you're doing something wrong. If you're still bailing them out and not letting them solve their own problems, you're making them weak. You've got to let children grow up, and you've got to let them learn responsibilities. My granddaughter, Brooklyn, is one of the sweetest, loving, most talented kids I know. She has chores that she hates. Her job is clean all the bathrooms. She doesn't like that job. She tells us all the time, if I could get any other job, but that's not an option in her house. But even though she hates her chores, she is obsessed with her mother and father. I have never met a kid, her mom and dad are her heroes. Don't think that because you give a child some responsibilities and they pitch a fit a couple times, they're going to be mad at you for the rest of their life. I'll tell you when they're going to be mad at you, when they grow up and can't do anything. That's when they're going to be mad at you. They're going to be mad at you for rescuing them their whole life and never letting them to grow up. You want to know when they're going to be mad? They're going to be mad when they have to change a tire and dad didn't show them how. They're going to be mad when they have to cook a meal and no one showed them how to cook. They're going to be mad when they have to pay a bill and no one let them handle a checkbook or manage money, because their whole life someone was always bailing them out to keep them from throwing a fit. No, that's what you do to 2-year-olds. That's not what you do to 15-year-olds. 15-year-olds do not get a choice whether they go to church or not. They do not get a choice. If you live in the house and you eat the food, you go to church when we go to church. That's not a choice you get. You don't give children like that. That is not a choice. There are some non-negotiables if you want them to grow up healthy, if you want them to grow up healthy-minded, if you want them to grow up spiritual. There are some things. Just look at the families who do and the families who don't and tell me there's not a difference. The kids that don't go to church are causing trouble in their Christian homes all the time because the house is always divided. It's always divided. But I look at families that are sitting with their families today. They don't have to be. They could be sitting somewhere else or not even be here at all. But they're sitting with their mom and dad. And I'm telling you, those are some of the most mature, respectful young people. And they will make you want your kid to marry somebody? Pick them. I'm telling you, pick them. They have a good raising. All right. So let's talk about parenting baby Jesus. Now, the goal of every parent is to raise your children to be responsible, respectful, and independent. Don't leave out that last one. You want your kids to be responsible, respectful, and independent. You don't want to, you can't, because you have low self-esteem, don't make yourself their hero. Don't be a helicopter mom who can't even let them out of your sight. They need to be out of your sight. How are they ever going to make their first decision if you're not there to make it for them? Don't weaken your children by hovering over them and never letting them breathe or make a decision.
Thank you so much for supporting our ministry. If this has blessed you, please say a prayer for us. And if you would like to give, we have 4 ways that you can do that. You can give online at bryancutshall.com, or if you're a PayPal user, just PayPal us at Church Trainer. Or you can also give through the mail at P.O. Box 267, Georgetown, Tennessee 37336. Or if you're a Venmo user, you can Venmo us also at Church Trainer. Thank you, and God bless you, and may the Lord multiply your seed. Now back to Hope in the Word.
So let's talk quickly about parenting baby Jesus. The Bible introduces us to the Son of God. We see basically 3 things in his childhood and infancy. First of all, we see the story of how Mary nurtured him. She wrapped him in swaddling clothes, laid him in the manger. She cuddled him. She coddled him. She loved on him. In the second story, they're fleeing to Egypt to keep him safe, because the Pharaoh, or not the Pharaoh rather, but the king Herod is against them, and they leave to keep him safe. So we have 2 principles here. The next time we see them, they're in a house, and that's when the Magi show up and give them gifts, and they're in a house, and the baby's about 2 years old. Sorry to mess up your Christmas story and your manger scene. But we see 2 things that are primary in raising children from the age of 0 to 7, nurture and safety. Okay, so the things you need to focus on the most as a parent is I need to nurture my children, feed them, keep them alive, keep them healthy, and keep them safe. Keep them safe. I cannot put enough emphasis on that, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more, about parents that are not keeping their children safe by the things they let them hear that come out of their mouth. So the third story of Jesus is living in a house. Now, there is a book of the Apocrypha, which is one of the lost books of the Bible. It's considered a sacred text by the Catholic Church and a few other churches. Some Greek Orthodox Church accepts it as well. It's called the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. And the Infancy Gospel of Thomas is not canonized, so it's not in your 66 books, but it's in the lost books, the 13 lost books of the Bible. And so this book talks about Jesus growing up as a kid. It is the story of the little boy Jesus. And most of the book is just filled with, there's a couple of miracles. He brings a bird back to life and a few things like that. But most of the time in that book, he's just playing. He's just a kid playing. So Mary and Joseph wanted Jesus to have a playful childhood, a normal childhood where they're not worried about adult things. They're not trying to solve adult problems. There's a season of your life that they just need to play and not have to bear stress and worry about anything. So we keep them safe. So here's what we learned from that. We learned, first of all, to keep your children safe and keep your children nurtured. And here's the next thing you need to know. Every parent needs to know this. Your children are not adults. Don't let them hear adult conversations. If you let them hear adult conversations, you're putting pressure and stress on your child they do not know how to process. They should never have to feel your pain as a child. You protect them. They should be safe and secure. Don't use your children for leverage because you can't get along with your spouse. Children are not leverage. Children are gifts from the Lord. And I honestly have to tell you, the biggest mistake I see some parents making is letting their children hear conversations they should not be hearing. Hear conversations that they do not need to put that in their head yet. They do not need to process that through their emotions yet. It's too early. You have to do things when it's appropriate for that child. So there are some things that are not age appropriate for a child to have to process. A child should not have to process divorce. Yes, if it happens, explain to them another way, but don't let them hear the fights that lead up to that. If you and your spouse are fighting, get out of earshot of your children. Come on, people. Get out of the earshot of your children. Don't put your child through that. I could get real strong in my language there, but I'm really holding back. There's words like abuse that people could use for abusing children by making them hear two adults go at it. When that child doesn't even know what's going on, all you're doing is making them afraid. Children should be protected and nurtured. Mary says, let's go to Egypt where we're not going to worry about it, we're not going to talk about it, and I'm going to love on you and keep you safe. There's an issue that is called enmeshment. It's an emotional enmeshment syndrome. And that issue is when an adult makes a child responsible for their emotional well-being. When an adult is leaning on a child and makes the child responsible for their emotional well-being. And do you know what they say about the emotional enmeshment syndrome? It is no different from raising a child with a raging alcoholic. They said the emotions on that child are the same. The pressure on that child are the same. And people who make their children responsible for their well-being is no different than raising them in a chaotic home with an alcoholic when you never know what's going to happen from day to day to day and how they're going to come in and change the atmosphere. Protect your children. Don't make them responsible for your emotions. I got a call one night from a family, and it broke my heart when this happened. I knew that this woman and her husband didn't get along very well, and they could go at it, man. I won't call their names. They don't live in Tennessee, so don't worry about them. But this couple could go at it, and one night she went after him with a frying pan, and the little girl got scared, and the mom called me on the phone and handed it to her 8-year-old because she wanted me to hear the argument. And her little girl was scared and crying and holding up the phone. I don't know what she thought she was going to get out of me, but she did not get what she thought she was going to get. I'll tell you that. She got a piece of my mind is what she got, and she wasn't ready for that. Because when she made that little 8-year-old girl hold up that phone so I could hear her and her husband arguing, I told the little girl, go get your older brother. And I told the older brother, get them out of the room. These little girls should not be made responsible to do that. I'm going to come or send somebody or a policeman to your house to pick you up because you do not need to stay in that environment tonight. And that's exactly how I handled it. So you want me to send somebody to your house? Call me the next time y'all fighting, thinking that's going to get you some leverage. It's going to get you a lot more than that. I promise you that. I am not going to stand by watching a child get abused. You can call me whatever you want to tell me. I will take up for the child every single time. Children should be kept safe and nurtured and protected. So don't be screaming at people and letting your children pay the price for it. Here's a great statement from Bryan. He says, our children are suffering from secondhand stress by trying to do so much for them that we're actually making kids less happy. They're feeling so much stress that they're actually making them less happy. You know, here's the goal of parenting. The goal of parenting is imitation. So enough of the bad stuff. Let's talk about the good stuff. So we're nurturing a child. We're making them feel safe. So what is the goal of parenting? Imitate me. That's what the Apostle Paul said to his child, to his spiritual sons. Do what I do. I'm teaching you how to treat other people. Do what I do. I remember when our first granddaughter was 4 years old, her daddy was preaching a youth camp. So both of my girls married ministers, and he was actually preaching a youth camp, and she had watched these teenagers laying on the floor crying and praying all week long. And so she comes home from the youth camp, and she says that she's doing this ballet little thing, you know, in front of Faith and I. And then she says just out of nowhere, oh, when I get through with this, I want to lay on the floor, and can you lay your hands on my head so I can lay on the floor and cry? And I didn't know what she meant. I thought, well, I don't know what she meant, but I just was going with it. She's 4, and I'm thinking, well, she'll change her mind. No, she did her little ballet thing. She said, okay, Papa, I want to lay on the floor. I want you to lay your hands on me so I can cry. Or touch my head is what she said. So I have no idea. I just walk over and touch her head, and she starts crying. And she says, oh, God, I've done stuff. I'm thinking, you are 4 years old. What kind of stuff have you? You don't even know what stuff means. And that's what she said, oh God, I've done stuff. That's the only thing she could say. And I realized when that was happening, she was imitating these young people that she had been seeing on the floor at youth camp all week long there as her daddy was preaching that she got it. She wanted to lay on the floor like they did and cry and say, oh God, I've done stuff. So she did. And I had to catch up really fast. But what you want is you want kids to imitate you.
This program is brought to you by the partners of Bryan Cutshall and Church Trainer Ministries. Please help us pray that the Lord will continue to send us more partners so we can expand His kingdom around the world.